Peace, party people. Welcome back to episode 63 of Where My Killer Tape At. Man, 63 episodes. I know it's been a minute, and the lot has happened, but here we are. We are going to talk a little bit about conspiracy theories, and we're going to talk about what a false equivalence is, because a lot of y'all be doing that. I'm going to do a quick review of the movie The Burial of Kojo, and we're going to talk about collective grieving. I'm going to try to really stay away from discussing Nipsey Hussle because, like I'm going to say later on, a lot of people have talked about him and everything that needs to be said about him needs to be said. Other than that, much love and rest in power to him. And here we go. I want to. I like to introduce myself.
Now greetings to the world.
Yo. For episode 63 of Where My Killer Tape At, I'm guzzling Doug's coffee Imperial Stout. It's brewed with cocoa and coffee, man. This stuff is smooth and it's hardcore. Word is born. Also, man, I want to do a retraction. A couple episodes ago, I talked about Justice Smollett and how, I was like, oh, he probably did it, and I want to retract that. I want to say that. I want to apologize to him. And a big fuck you to the Chicago Police Department because once again, there was foul play on their part on so many levels. But I just wanted to do that because, I never took the side of the Chicago Police Department, never. But I know it comes off that way. And a lot of people I noticed did that and they took their side when we shouldn't have been taking their side. That being said, these type of things happen every day, unfortunately, where, people of the LGBT community, trans people are attacked consistently for who they are. And that's something that we should not make light of, we should not make fun of, we should not dismiss. Because then we're probably no better than the people that actually do that. So I want to put that in there. Word. There's this meme going around that I've seen, and people do this all the time when we have this discussion. And we're going to talk about what a false equivalence is, right? But this subject came from this meme that I saw where they had Bill Cosby, Justin Smollett, and Cardi B in the same meme, and trying to say that they're all like equal in what they do. So first, let's define what a false equivalence is, right? I'm going to give you the actual scientific meaning of it. It's a logical fallacy in which two completely opposing arguments appear to be logically equivalent when in fact they are not. This is also called a fallacy of inconsistency, right? So, and a lot of times we do that when two different subjects have one trait that's the same, right? So Bill Cosby committed a bunch of crimes. Justin Smollett may have committed a crime, right? I don't think he did, but we assume that he did. And then Cardi B admitted recently that when she was a sex worker, she used to drug men and rob them, right? So I know what ended up happening with the Cardi B thing was people were saying that, and it's funny because the man that actually came out and said that she had raped him, drugged and raped him, actually lied about it. He actually came out and lied. It was on Twitter. But anyway, he said that. People ran with it. People were running around saying that she was a rapist and everything. I'm not saying that didn't happen because it might have happened, right? She could have drugged somebody, raped them, and then taken their money. That could have happened. I'm not saying that it didn't. But in this instance, let's say that it didn't. So people are saying, and again, they committed a crime. They all committed crimes. So we feel like they're similar and that they all should be in jail together, right? And that's what a false equivalence is, right? Like, so if I talk about what Cardi B did and I say, oh, she did whatever, somebody's gonna say, well, what about, well, would you say the same to Bill Cosby? And I'm like, it's a false equivalence. And I think that we need to talk about those things, because when we have these discussions, we have these debates or disagreements or what have you, we do that often. We always throw things in there, right? I think another one that we like to throw around is like Hitler, right? They'll throw Hitler around and be like, oh, Hitler did this, and this person is just as bad as Hitler. And I'm like, not necessarily so, right? I wouldn't put Jeffrey Dahmer was a horrible person, right? He was an evil man, but I wouldn't put him in the same boat as Hitler, right? Like Hitler, that's levels, right? So in a discussion of Jeffrey Dahmer, I wouldn't bring up Hitler, because that's just, it's a false equivalence, right? They were both evil men, though, right? That's where the trait is common, right? But I wouldn't bring that up in a discussion about Jeffrey Dahmer and serial killers, right? So we do this often, and I think we should be careful when we do that, right? And a false equivalence is something that people actually use in debating, right? They'll debate, they'll have a debate, and they'll throw in a false equivalence. And when you actually go to college or high school and you learn about debates, it's actually like a tactic that they use to throw off the other person, right? Because when you do that, what you're really doing in essence is you don't want to convince the judges that you're right. You want to convince that the other team that their approach is doubtful. That's what you try to do. So you do those false equivalences. So it's a tactic that people use. Now people use it to gaslight all the time. So we should, and a lot of times I've done it by, unintentionally, right? I've done it without even thinking about it. And so what I always tell people is, if I ask a question, if I ask a question, it should be answered, or vice versa. If you ask me a question, I should answer it. I shouldn't give you a false equivalence, because those things are two different things, right? So what Bill Cosby did, which, he was probably one of the worst serial rapists in our generation from what we know, right? And I shouldn't compare Justice Smollett to what he did. And even Cardi B, right? Even if she did rape somebody, I still wouldn't compare them, because the magnitude of what Bill Cosby did and what we're accusing Cardi B of doing is just, it's big levels, right? So I just want to make sure that we're not doing that. And now, now when somebody's debating you and they do that, you can say, hey, that's a false equivalence, bro. And I know I talked about Cardi B real quick, but I also want to point out that sex work is work. Sex work is work. Sex work is work. Sex work is work. Stop trying to make it seem like it's not work. Y'all don't do that, but it's work. People pay for it. You know what I mean? Legalize it. That's what shit I'm on right now, for real. But sex work is work. Work. I really didn't want to talk about Nipsey Hussle, but it's kind of hard to not talk about Nipsey Hussle because everybody's talking about Nipsey Hussle. But also, I kind of feel like everything that needs to be said about Nipsey Hussle has already been said, right? But anyway, I want to talk about public grieving, and I want to talk about how things are different, and I want to do a little bit. I know I talked about false equivalence, but but I want to talk about a couple of things that I remember that kind of remind me of this. So, we're doing this thing called public grieving, and it happens, right? It actually happens, right? Where the public, the general public, grieves the passing of a celebrity or politician or notable figure. Now, when it comes to the hip hop community, the last time I remember something like this happened was, two figures, when Tupac was murdered and then when Biggie was murdered. And I remember it's kind of like a public grieving. And it's crazy because we didn't have the internet back then, 1996, 1997, we didn't have the internet. We did, but it wasn't like it is now, particularly with social media. But I just want to point out how different that was, how we have this collective grieving, right? And it's funny because this happened with I remember when Pac was murdered. A lot of people my age could tell you where they were when Pac was murdered, or when they were told when Pac was murdered. And a lot of us can remember where we were when Biggie was murdered, right? I remember with Pac, and both Pac and Biggie, I was working third shift, and I remember, I think my son's mom told me about Pac, and then I remember turning on MTV and Kurt Loder coming on, because back then we got our entertainment news from Kurt Loder from MTV News. And the same thing happened when Biggie passed away. But we all did a public grieving. And I wasn't a big Pac fan. I was a Biggie fan. So I remember my boy Eric the Green Eye Bandit coming through, and he was still drinking 40s at that time. Shout out to that brother. And he brought some 40s over. At that time I wasn't drinking. I was sober at that time. So we just really listened to his music and really did that. And I realized a lot of people did the same thing. People held vigils in their town, and then their funerals were really something that was broadcast, and I'm seeing it happen again with Nipsey Hussle. So it's interesting to watch, and I think it's good. I think it's a good thing that we do this publicly, that we they have this collective grieving, because it's a shared experience, and I think those are important. And I think what I love so much right now that's happening is that we're having a lot of conversations about different things when it comes to Nipsey Hussle, and about gun violence, and about homophobia, and about giving back to our community, and loving the hood, and really looking out for our peoples. We're talking about so many different things, and I think that's dope that we're having this discussion. That sometimes we're going to open up old wounds, but that's part of healing and growing. And I hope that we continue to do this. I hope we continue to have these discussions and don't wait until the next one. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got to say about that. And I'm going to try to probably do another episode. We talk about these kind of things, particularly gun violence, and particularly about homophobia and people, and how complex they are, and how we should discuss all these things, right? Because one of the questions that we have that come out when something like this happens to a celebrity is, when we start talking about the bad things that they may have done or said, there are always people that say, this is not a good time to talk about it. And we need to talk about that. We need to really open that discussion up. Word. It's all a game. It's all a game. I don't want to spend a segment on this dude, because it's not really about this dude. And he's dead, so I don't know how motherfuckers is still giving him props. I'm talking about quote unquote Dr. Sebi. I mean, quote Dr. Sebi, end quote, right? First of all, he's not a doctor. Dr. Sebi is not a doctor. And it's crazy how all these conspiracy theories come out. And how I mean the thing about, and I can understand it, and I'm gonna do a segment on conspiracy theory. I'm gonna do a whole show on conspiracy theories, because I used to believe in conspiracy theories all the time. And what did Dave Chappelle say one time? He said that, what's a black man without his paranoia? And that's pretty much what it comes from. And also it comes from decades, centuries of oppression, right? When you see things, when you learn about things like Tuskegee experiment, when you learn about things about eugenics, Sarah Bartman, you look at all these different things that's happened to us, that white supremacy has done to us, that white people have done to us. It's not, that leap to conspiracy theory is not that deep of a, there's not that long of a leap. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I definitely get it. Again, I used to believe it, used to debate it. I used to actually get paid to lecture on why conspiracy theories are true, but they're not. And I think the scariest thing about conspiracy theories is that they try to give us, and I don't even want to say it's a simple explanation, because Occam's razor is the most simplest explanation, is probably the solution, right? That's probably the answer, right? Nipsey Hussle got killed by a stupid individual who was jealous of what he had. And that's pretty much what it is, right? And you know what? Unfortunately, in the hood, I know people that's happened to, that they were killed by someone who didn't like them for whatever reason, hated them for whatever reason. It's that simple. And there's no conspiracy behind that, right? Activists get killed all the time, and we're going to talk about the Ferguson thing in a second. We're going to talk about that. In another episode. We're going to talk about all those things and how we get to that, right? And let me just say, our interaction with authority figures have always been harmful and dangerous, right? So, and even with medical services, they've been harmful and dangerous. So when something comes around, we're going to always look at it as conspiracy theory, because a lot of times you realize that they were in a conspiracy to oppress us, right? We realize that, right? But then again, white supremacy is not a conspiracy. We know it. It's out in the open. Studies come out all the time that prove it as structural racism and sexism and all that. It's like all kinds of shit that we see all the fucking time, right? We just had a judge go to prison for, giving excessive sedatives to young black boys and getting paid for it, right? So like, but we know about the prison industrial complex, right? You also the documentary 13. So again, I can see where's that leap, and I can see where people can say conspiracy theories. This is why I believe them. And what I wanted to say earlier was that it gives us something that we could explain. And sometimes when we can do those things, we kind of feel like we have a control over it, right? We kind of feel like I know what happened, and because I know, I kind of have control of the matter, right? And because when you don't know what happens, you feel powerless. And I think that's one thing conspiracy theories do. Another thing conspiracy theories do, the second thing is that it says to people, and I remember when I used to believe in the Illuminati, right? And I used to be like, oh, the Illuminati. And people say, what can we do to stop the Illuminati? And I'd be like, it's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do about it. And that's the thing about conspiracy theories, is it does actually make us powerless because we feel like there's nothing we can do about it, when there are things that we can do about structural racism and sexism, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick on conspiracy theories. But again, I'm going to have a whole entire show on it, bring people in there and everything. So, work. Also, man, I'm gonna put in the show notes. Shout out to my man Sekou. I was on his show, the Fly Guys podcast, and we were supposed to talk about, and that's really screwed the pooch on this. We were supposed to talk about toxic masculinity in hip hop culture, and we ended up just really talking about respectability politics and what's dope and what's not dope, and we ended up getting into a discussion about what the older generation used to listen to and what the younger generation used to listen to. And I think we made good points, but we didn't talk about, I think I briefly talked about toxic masculinity and how it's part of the, overall culture, period. And hip hop music is just, just reflecting that. And the reason why I'm apologizing, and it's no one's fault, it's really our fault, really, to be honest, meaning everybody's. I just don't want you to click on something. I'm going to put in the show notes. I just don't want you to click on something and then you listen to it and you don't get what you want or get what's needed. Actually get what's needed. So even at the end of that segment, I talked about how we ended up just going in circles about hip hop music, and because a lot of times what we end up doing when we talk about like hip hop music, we're doing it now. When we talk about like younger cats or mumble rap or whatever, and people having less respect for women or whatever. But it's always been like that in hip hop music, and it's real easy for us older heads to try to blame it on the younger heads, and we would probably more guilty instead of saying just as guilty than they are now. And a good example of that would be Freaknik, right? We can go on and on about that. So I want to talk, I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of times we get caught up in semantics and the discussions of things, that we move away from what we need to be discussing, which was toxic masculinity. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I'm gonna put it in the show notes. Shout out to my homie Sekou, my brother Sekou, man. I love you. Word. I want to do a quick review of the Burial of Kojo, directed by the Blitz Ambassador. Word is born. If you go on IG, you could actually find them on the Blitz Ambassador. And what I love is that I remember when he first posted the short on Instagram, I was like, "Ooh, I really want to see it," because the visuals in this movie were dope. And it's on Netflix, so I was just like, "Oh shit." So I got a chance to see it on Netflix, and I think it's dope. Good looking out to Netflix, huh? Right? And Ava DuVernay as well. So, but anyway, it's his first movie, and it takes place in Ghana, which I think was dope. And the story is about the relationship between this young girl and her father, and how he had told her all these folk tales, and her father goes missing. So she uses her access to another dimension to find her father. It's an amazing story. I'm gonna leave that at that. I'm not gonna do any spoilers for it, but the visuals was just amazing. The use of mythology was just really on point. There was just, it's a movie you got to pay attention to. I love movies like this. You got to pay attention to the details and the dialogue. You just got to, and it's just. But I like how there's not a lot of dialogue in it, but the dialogue gives you clues, but also just the visuals really lend to the movie. And what I like is that he doesn't like go over the top of special effects. Doesn't use CGI. But just the way the angles and the colors really like give you that science fiction fantasy feel to it. And that's just a good demonstration of how you don't really need a lot of money to do these kind of things. And I just found it to be really dope. I don't want to spoil it. I highly recommend you watching it. You'll love it. I think you should watch it with your family and friends and really have a discussion about it. And I really, when it comes to like folk tales from places like West Africa, I love it. I've always loved it as a kid. Somebody stole my West African folk tales, by the way. I'm going to figure out who did that. I love those stories. Not just the folklore that comes from thousands of years ago, but also the stuff written recently. And shout out to Nnedi Okorafor, an author who actually just did a piece, who actually did some Black Panther stuff. She's amazing. And I think that people like her in that vein, she comes from West Africa, she's Nigerian, are using those stories to tell sci-fi stories, because to me, those are sci-fi stories, word is born. So check out the Burial of Kojo on Netflix. You definitely won't disappoint. Word. For this health segment, I'm going to talk about something that I talked about this before. How like I every Tuesday I call a social media fast for 24 hours. I just log off for all my social media, and I'm only on Twitter and Instagram, so I just don't log on at all. And I do it. I've been doing it. I started it back in November of last year, 2018, and I was only gonna do it for a month, but it just kept doing it. And now it's like a habit. Like I just, when I go to bed Monday night, I just don't touch it until Wednesday morning. And I did it at first to see if I could discipline myself, because I love being on Twitter, if you don't know me by now. But I think that like there are times where we have to do that. I think we really do need to disengage. And this is why I want to talk about it during the health segment. And with the murder of Nipsey Hussle, that is a good reason. Just the public grieving was just, for me, it was overwhelming. For me, it was just too much. I talk about gun violence. I often, I have friends who were victims of gun violence. I've been shot at, and I didn't realize, I never imagined that at my age, people would still be getting murdered. People that I know would still be getting murdered by gun violence. And I didn't know Nipsey Hussle, but I was a fan of his. I've actually played Victory Lap every morning. But anyway, I know people that to this day are still killed by gun violence, and so for me, it's close to home and it's very triggering. So just seeing that, I got to disengage. Like I just got to disengage. So doing it every Tuesday kind of works for me. Even if I come out with an episode on Monday, I try to promote it as much as I can. If I put it up Monday night, then I guess I don't be promoting on Tuesday. I just take that L. That should just discipline myself to do the episode sooner. But I recommend everybody do it every now and then. I know people who've done like 30 days of social media, and they've said that it's helped them become more productive. And there's other benefits. So I recommend, you don't got to do 30 days. You don't even got to do like once a week, maybe do it like, try a week off or whatever. I think I've done a couple of days off. I remember, deleting my Facebook account because I just felt like I spent too much time on Facebook. So I think it's a good idea for us to do that, because we all kind of get those emotions. People, there are things that trigger us that we may not even know trigger us. And there may be things that bother us or really, stick to us, even when we're asleep. So disengaging every now and then is probably a good idea. Just give it a try.
Yo, I think Prince should run first on this one. I think so. Yo, I think Prince should run first on this one. I think so.
Yo, a couple of shout outs, of course, for episode 63, right? Definitely get a shout out, Feminista Jones. If you have not picked up her book, Reclaiming Our Space, How Black Feminists Are Changing the World from the Tweets to the Streets, I told her I'm going to do a review on it. I haven't read it yet, but I will, and do a nice review on it on the podcast. But it's her 40th birthday, so shout out to you. You're dope. You're amazing. Glad to even just have you even look at my tweets. Definitely want to give a shout out to my book club, Noir Book Club. We're doing Emergent Strategy by Adrian Brown right now. Ooh, man, it's going to be a dope meeting. Ooh, I cannot wait. And then shout out to Tea with Q and J. I actually just talked about them in the show episode. They just did 200 episodes. 200 episodes is a big deal in the podcast world, because even I listen to podcasts that have started strong and then like just ended for whatever reason. Sometimes I don't even tell you. So for 200 episodes, yo, y'all an inspiration. I love y'all. I learned so much from y'all, man. It's like going to school. So definitely, I'm going to put that in the show notes, the 200 episode. Word.
Yeah.
There you have it, party people. Episode 63 of Where My Killer Tape At. Man, episode 63, right? Anyway, if you want to get a hold of me, if you want me to book me for any discussions or panel discussions or any workshops, you can send me on my email, DanTresOMi@gmail.com, and that's DanTresOMi. And in the subject heading, make sure you put in bookings. And if you want to hit me up on the Twitters, the official one for the show is Omi's Podcast, OMIS Podcast. But the one I'm usually on is, I'm always on DanTresOMi, so it's at DanTresOMi. Definitely do that. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all for listening, and y'all always come back. And shout out to all the new listeners. Word.